Hello everyone. My name is Dr. Sneha Roo. I am a palliative physician and I'm a founder of Uri Kalankini. Uri Kalankini is an organization that's changing narratives around menstruation and sexuality in India using art, theatre, and dialogue. This series is called Leaning into the Network series, where we're bringing people from different parts of our network to meet each other, to share their skills, to share their journeys, and to share the specific relief efforts they're making during the COVID season. uh, so now we have Adviti with us. Hi Adviti, thanks for
Hi,
coming.
hi.
Adviti is an arts educator. And okay, I'll actually leave it to you. How else would you introduce yourself? What else would you add? Because you have
Uh,
like a huge body of work.
so basically, I work with children, and I collaborate and volunteer at different organizations. And of late, I have been looking at issues around women and the stigma and the conditioning that we have been brought up. So yeah, that my
Right.
work. Yeah.
Hmm. Adviti, I just want to tell people who are watching that we are live on Facebook. So if you have any questions for Adviti by through the interview, please type them in the chat box. Last 15 minutes we will take. And Adviti, I'll also remind you if you can share the video on your timeline. So
Yeah, I'm just doing that.
watching. Yeah.
Yeah.
Adviti's friends, hi. You can ask your questions in the comment section, not on the timeline, but on the page. I will not be able to access Adviti's timeline. So please come to the page and ask questions there.
Yeah, I've
Mm,
done it.
super. I'll
Okay.
start with the same first question we ask everybody who comes here.
Okay.
When were you made aware of your gender? Do you remember like one specific incident or a series of, how you were told that
Hmm.
you're a girl and anything?
Hmm. Yeah. So thing is, no matter how hard I try to give a very positive answer for this question, it is associated with something that is really a tragic experience and very personal to me. So I can I mean it is about we were attending a wedding. I was probably in third or fourth standard. Till then, it was I would just I had not given, or at least right now I cannot recollect. So I was attending this wedding, and at night for a good amount of time, even I don't know who is this person. I was molested as a child, and the successive events which followed that night was very horrific. It kind of stays, the effects of which I still I'm trying to battle it out even now. And afterwards, when I went and told something like this happened with my mother, and I'm extremely close to my mother, and the way she reacted was something like, this you should not tell it to anybody. You have to keep it to yourself. If you tell it, the blame will come on you. This is how she reacted, and we did absolutely nothing about this event or the person who did it. Or I think after which I became really really sensitive about touch or my gender, or something of yeah.
Thank you for sharing it with us. And it's unfortunate that, and I'm really sorry that, this was how you got aware. I also had experience of sexual molestation throughout
Mm-hmm.
by a family member itself and from age
Exactly. Yeah.
15, 16. Um,
Uh-huh.
and it's, I kind of resonate when you had a good relationship with your mother and you went and spoke to her. I never could manage that till I was
Okay.
18.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I mean, I'm really sorry that. I hope I didn't push you into this
No, no,
question.
no, no, no. I actually gave it a thought, whether to bring this up. And afterwards, I have had, I have discussed this with my, other girlfriends. And surprisingly, it is such a common thing. And every single, like, I think out of 10, at least 5 to 6 people that have spoken have shared, like, probably they might not have initiated because I did. They also shared their experience. It is ironic, and it really breaks my heart at young age what girls go through. And
Yeah. Um, yeah, and the response that you shared also is pretty common. Like,
yeah,
forget about it or keep quiet
yeah,
or behaving like this is just the norm you have to
yeah.
deal
And because we reacted, or my, I told this only to my mother, because nothing was done, or because we did not address this issue, it kept happening
with. Right.
till I was in 10th. I think that was the last time something of that sort happened from a family member itself. So because this was not addressed, I kept have to going through that experience from the same person couple of times. So
Thank you. In my case, it was very weird because I had the courage to talk about it to my father, not this
okay,
particular incident. Mm,
okay.
But when an office boy tried to molest me and then was
Mm-mm-mm.
pressurizing me, it was a very, weird situation. I went up to my dad, sat in his office and told that this fellow is doing this to me. And my father was like, okay, you want to talk anything else or else you can go. Like, it was
Ah,
like a formal meeting and I did it. I don't know where I got, I didn't feel shame for that. But when
okay,
I had to speak about my family member and what was happening, I somehow felt that I was a part of it. And I could
Mm-mm.
not bring it up for very, very long.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, just trying to say that the dynamic with like one particular person experiencing it with two different people can give
Correct.
different responses. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I'm in agreement when you said that when nothing is done, it kept perpetuating.
yeah.
Somehow silence was festering that more and more.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Um, which was your first medium that you chose as an expression, and was it therapeutic? Because we have the trauma. Was it therapeutic for you when you took up art?
Yeah. So I mean, I think I started like how any kid would, just start scribbling around the walls. That's how I started. So I think it's just pencil or any random things that I found, or charcoal, and I would just scribble around the house. But I think I mean, I there was certain, we had certain challenges. So there was some kind of a tragic situation sort of a thing when I was young. So my mother somehow felt that I should somehow engage my child in some art. So so she tried, she sings, so she tried that with me, and it was not working. But I would go on drawing or sketching. So first thing that she bought was a watercolor. Like, usually you don't start with watercolors with child. So but then I got watercolors, and she told me that you have to use it very carefully. I think it stayed with me for like some 10 years. I'm sure she is very possessive of my things. I'm sure in one carton box in one corner you can still find that line. So watercolors was something that I think I started using first.
Wow. Um, art usually also, apart from being therapeutic, gives us a way of, expressing our rage,
Yeah,
injustices, to social injustices. I know that you have, you have worked with a Ramani Art Project. We'll
yeah.
see them again, and probably you'll come again. But can you give other examples of how you've used your art to address social justice issue?
Okay, so recently, I mean, we all are aware of CAA or NRC, that whole thing. So I think I could just attend one of the protests. I couldn't go because the work and the timings. I couldn't go, and also the part of the city that I stay and the distance. So I would just make some posters and share it with my friends, those who are going to the protest. So I'll just show you two of the posters which I made. So this actually reads Kelo Bandhu Navella Vandu, means listen up friend, we are all one. And this is one more, Dani Gudi Sindhu. I mean, it's all written in Kannada. Dani Gudi Sindhu Navella Vandu means shout out, that we all are one, something on those lines. Yeah. So exactly. Awaaz do hum ek hai. That in Kannada, because I resonate more with Kannada, and here we understand our mother tongue. So I wrote it in Kannada.
Rightly so. And like you brought up another important point here, that many times we cannot go to protests, and that's not the only way to participate in social justice activism. Because I had a time when literally I'm telling that there was a time when I could not go because I was with my folks, and they were not okay with going, until my father one day asked, "How come you're not going?" And then I got permission, kind of thing, to go. Also, there were times when I didn't go because I was literally scared. Like, the situation is like that. I was scared of Lathi, I was scared of being detained, and now people are getting arrested. So you brought up a very important point, that we have to tend to our mental and social circumstances and still participate.
Correct.
The way we can. Research, art. I'm interested to know about your project with respect to posture and gender. Called Sit Properly. That's what I think connected me to you. So
So again, I mean, it was a very small incident which happened almost some 10 years ago, and that time I did not give too much of importance for it. It happened, in my own way. I addressed it and I moved on. But I was talking to one of my friend. Her name is Shaista, and we were talking about this, and I generally shared that incident, and I started wondering, a very small incident which happened like 10 years ago really had remained with me. Then that was a trigger point, that if such a thing is carried forward even after 10 years, then I have to address it in some way. So I'll just briefly tell you about the incident. So I was sitting in BMTC bus in Bangalore, in Majestic. I think I was taking the bus, and I was in ladies' seat, and I was facing towards starting of the bus. You have facing seats, right, to each other. So I was facing to this elderly man, and I had crossed my legs, and he I think I must be around 23 then, and he told me, sit properly. He told this in Kannada, like, "Sarya kutko." Then I was like, it was not even fully clothed. That is what I mean. It was leggings, and I was also wearing dupatta then. And then I said, no, I'm comfortable like this. No. And then he started ranting, saying, because of girls like this, our culture is, going to drain. And I just plugged in the earphones, and that's about it. But then this incident got me thinking, and I shared this incident in a small WhatsApp message, and I asked my other girlfriends, okay, now, did this ever happen? Something of this sort. Were you ever told to sit in a certain way because you're a girl? And the responses that I got was extremely overwhelming, and that led me to research a bit on this subject. So I'll just show you the first sketch that I was just this this is a sketch. So just because, see here, this is my own posture from top angle, okay, but here the knees are not touching each other, so you have a gap sort of a thing, it is spread, the leg is spread. For such a posture, I was asked to sit properly. Then I started just recording different postures of my own self to start with. and all these. It's like just crossed your leg on top of the other, and these are all the different postures. And another incident which I would like to share is one of my friend. She was feeding her own kid in her own space, like at her own house, and I guess she was just sitting comfortably, feeding her kid, and she was asked to sit properly by her own husband, and nobody else was around, just because she was just probably spreading her leg and sitting. It is very strange. Often these things are told to us by our mothers or sisters, or by somebody very close, like in this case husband. And even though nothing is seen, you have dressed appropriately, fully, still, just because of the fact that you are a woman, you are supposed to sit in a particular fashion.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, this is very strong. After we had this conversation, another thing happened. Like the person I'm speaking with right now, my friend, she has twin girls.
Okay.
And one of them was sitting outside her own house.
Okay.
There's a house, then garden, and then when you open the gate, it's like two steps, and then the road starts. So she's
Okay.
sitting on those two steps, and it was an empty road, no humans close by. The driver from opposite building.
Oh, okay.
And she's a 10-year-old person, growing up person, and she was sitting how she wants to sit, with that, which means legs a little bit apart. And he came and he's like, "What are you doing here? Go in!" And this tone he used, and he yelled at her. She's also a neurodiverse kid, so she came in and she was like, why did, which I think, which I think gives her the courage to not be affected and say what she feels.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
So other girls would have been conditioned, or if I was there,
Yeah.
when people told me to sit properly and behave properly in that age, I never thought of going and complaining.
Yeah.
So she came back and she said, why is this man asking to sit properly? Or, go inside. So actually, it was about sitting only. And she was like upset because she understood the energy behind the word and the tone, and the
Yeah.
fact that somebody else came and, she obliged. I think there was
Yeah.
anger on her that she
Correct.
obliged and she felt scared. And then my friend and her had a good conversation about, it lasted quite a long time.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, because it's traumatic when someone tells and asks, literally moves you away from
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
place and what you're doing.
Yeah.
For a young person to experience that, I think was very troublesome. Then her mother had a conversation about, okay, what is moral policing? That man was moral policing you. She gave
Oh,
it
okay.
and
Okay, give it to her friend. Yeah. Yeah.
awesome, no? So then then she brought back all the incidents about clothing, about behaving, her hair going like this.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
So, mummy, was that also moral policing? Was that also moral policing?
Okay.
So she tried to associate and make sense of her experiences.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, while I was very happy that she has a space and her mother is giving her tools to deal with it. So her mother also told that next time someone tells you, you say thank you, I can take care of myself. Very calmly, you can say that. So I was happy about this happening.
Correct. Yeah.
She got these tools and she got the space. But your conversation came to my mind that again it was about sitting properly. And
Correct.
for a child, she doesn't need to hear this.
Yeah.
And
No, and these things we tend to think that they are very small, or we associate very we think that they're trivial. But imagine the kind of conditioning you have as a girl, you will be going through from young age. Like as small as just sitting with your legs slightly spread is also controlled.
yeah, and
Uh,
just
uh,
because we had this again, we were continuing, and her father also is a friend. So father was like, "No, I think that I know the driver. He won't do it to harm her. It's just that he wants to protect her from other people who are watching." And then we had this conversation about if he wanted to protect her, then he would stand guard at a distance, and if something happened, he would intervene. not ask her to go in,
Hmm.
not snatch away that public space from her. It
Hmm.
produces this thing, which we
Yeah.
understand that there
Yeah.
are antisocial elements and children are being troubled and so yeah, all this about sit properly itself, and
Yeah.
too much to this. And I think because she didn't edit her emotions, she didn't
Yeah.
say that this is normal and just came inside and didn't tell us about it. I would have done that, and because she didn't do that, we all as adults got an opportunity to sit and think like, is it
Correct.
really
Yeah.
a small thing? Is it about COVID? Because there was nobody else.
Yeah.
Had if it would it be the same if a boy of 10-year-old would be sitting outside in front of
Correct. Yeah.
would it
No,
be the same?
this kind of, as in when, like, let's say a boy and a girl, treated in this manner, when they grow up, the whole dynamics changes. The way we behave and the way we interact changes because of all these circumstances one would have gone through during your childhood. All these matter, in your behavior, and how confidently you face situations. We associate a very small amount of meaning to all these things, but subconsciously they are very powerful, is what I feel.
And they like for me, even now I think it's somewhere there. Um, when when a male speaks, automatically my mind associates it with authority. That
Correct. Yeah.
because a male spoke, it's a more authoritarian voice, or it is like I have to listen to them, or
Correct.
um,
And these things happens very subconsciously, you won't realize it unless you make that conscious effort. You won't realize it.
and we tend to agree on most things, though we don't
Correct.
see inside because it
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
by
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
like that uncle. I'm sure when he said sit properly, though he was elderly man, but
Correct.
1 or 2 years elder and a male,
Yeah.
he's speaking, you take it as
Yeah.
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 Now moving on,
Yeah.
you worked with Aravani Art Project.
Yeah.
I just like again we'll call you with the everyone in your team. I just want to know what did you do and how was the experience was like for you personally.
Yeah. So when so I Aravani Art Project is run by Purnima. She's a very good friend of mine, and I mean, I knew that she is working with trans women, and I knew about her work. But personally, I started collaborating and working with her was when, I mean, I think I was going through my divorce, and it was a very very low point in my life, and that I think looking at all the women that I, that are associated with Aravani, and how they, I mean, listening to their stories and their take on life truly empowered me. I think, like the one thing that stuck with me with all my associations with Aravani is, I used to get scared. I literally at the end of the tunnel, I could not see the light. It was that bad. I was in that phase, and one thing that they told me is, like, do not plan much ahead. Like, think of your tomorrow, or just a week ahead. This sort of really helped me cope in that situation. And slowly, one step at a time, I started like rebuilding my life from scratch. And it was more than, I mean, of course, everything I cherished. More than anything, it was truly empowering to just be around you know uh, 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 people who are associated with Aravani, and to work with them.
Thank you. You can you talk a little bit about representation of
Mhm.
say women and queer folks in art? Like
Yeah.
how much do you get to see them and how are they depicted usually? Like from
Okay.
your background.
Uh, yeah. So I think women mostly are idealized and objectified in art to a greater extent. I guess they're depicted in two ends of the spectrum. Like So I think more real stories,
Hmm.
like we are culmination of everything, that is what makes a person real. No, that narrative has to come, is what I feel. Not at the, or making her a goddess, or a associating very negative this thing. I think that should be the narrative, personally, is what I feel. And queer community, I think nowadays a lot of changes it is happening. And we are it is first step that we have taken. And I mean that any problem, acknowledging the existence of the problem is a first step towards doing something about the problem, is what I feel. So that has happened. And a lot of like beautiful artworks, it has people are making. And I think we should just stay true to our artwork, and things will fall in place.
Yeah. I think I should have asked this one first. You're also an art educator. So
Yeah.
usually we define art as this is art, this is not art. So as an art educator, what do you teach whomever you teach or facilitate? How do you explain art to them? What is art? What all
Okay.
is art? Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so, I mean, I keep telling my students, like, because I experienced that growing up. Because I mean, we all tend to associate something beautiful with art. Like, so many people have told me, oh, I can't draw a straight line, or no, I can't make something beautiful. So just associating beauty with art is not what is art truly. So art is everything. It is, we are a part of society. And it is my reflection. As a society, the whole collective conscious of the society is what is art. It reflects at every stage that we are at. And truly, I think it gives voice for many unheard voices. And addresses a lot of issues. And it will reach more people, is what I feel.
Yeah, and even boxing the forms, like okay, writing as much as an art as painting, or
Correct.
are murals an art? Is collage an art? Is photography done by point and shoot an art? And also the hierarchy inside. What is considered art? What is not considered art itself is a very big.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it is evoking a certain kind of emotions, that should do. The medium shouldn't matter, is what I feel. That I mean, of course, it keeps changing the definition. There is no one particular definition. It is all very subjective. For me, art is, if a art can evoke a certain kind of emotion, it has, that is something called art for me.
Right. And continuing from the same thread, that there is a class component to art. Who
Yeah.
gets access to art, and whose work is considered as art. Can you talk a little bit more on that? The indigenous, there's appropriation, and their skills and crafts are appropriated, but not given the position of artwork as such. So, yeah.
I mean, strangely, people that I have been around, I mean, I have not personally faced this issue, or maybe in visual art, at least, that class, it truly doesn't matter. Probably, maybe something very traditional, a form of art, it might. But I think accessibility of art, it should be, of course, accessible to everybody. And I mean, there is, if you are truly expressing your how you're feeling, it can be any medium of art. I'm not saying from the perspective of painting or visual art only. Any medium of art, if you're expressing, and that freedom of expression should be given. That is the foundation of it. And I think nowadays there are many women artists who are, or at least I have been associated with a lot of women artists. So it is, I don't see it as a problem, but I mean, I have not experienced that problem personally.
Right, because we belong to a certain class of
Correct.
society.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because and I was asking this. This was because many times I would go to art gallery. I don't
Yeah.
consider myself an artist. I have no training in you know visual art at all.
Okay.
I have dabbed my foot a little bit into theater, and that too not performance theater. So it's like forum theater. Uh,
Okay.
then that became, the issue of caste was coming and why how they developed what they developed. They wanted to do socially engaged art. Uh,
Yeah.
so forum theater, I think, where you still go to the community and you're making with them with real life stories and
Correct.
incorporating. So I think there I found a little bit, but I'm still like personally searching for answer how if me belonging to a certain class with certain education will still feel like an outsider in the art world, and the aspiration is there, but
Huh.
everything around me says, oh, you're not artist enough, or so how would it be for people who have absolutely no access to even art galleries, or and also like they became conversations like these only made me realize that art is not only in art galleries, like you can
Correct. Of
find,
course.
yeah,
Yeah, of
for a
course.
layperson, yeah, please go on.
Yeah. Yeah. Come again?
No, I thought I cut you want to go on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Huh.
So, yeah, yeah, yeah. Go ahead. You go ahead. You go ahead.
Yeah. So for a layperson
Yeah.
like me, it was like, okay, art is an art gallery, and only if my work goes there, or if my performance goes there, then it is serious enough, or
Mm-mm.
only then I can call myself an artist. Or
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
I think yeah, times are changing. We are in that phase where it's not only about galleries. There have been nowadays it's. I mean, again, I have to acknowledge the fact that because I belong to a particular section of the society, I think I have this privilege to say it. It is more welcoming, and I myself have visited a lot of artisans, and traditionally, though they are not exposed to much of art galleries or internet or much of those things, but they what they truly do, for the sheer joy of art is also art. It doesn't have to be very sophisticated, or in belong to one art gallery or a monument, or things like that. So
One interesting conversation, it was like somebody asked me that, okay, you say spoken word poetry is an art form, then would three people sitting outside their huts drinking and singing, and some poetry coming out of it,
yeah.
and is that also art? Like,
Okay.
would in
Okay.
our own mind,
Yeah.
we have yeah, and it's always nice to be challenged like
Yeah,
that and say,
I just have a point to add on to that. So
yeah.
like I volunteer at Buddha Folklore. It is run by Savita Uday, and she works with a lot of local communities and tribal people there, to sort of record their food habits, and their culturally certain practices that they have been doing pertaining to farming. And she has done exceptionally good work. And there is one I mean I there is a person called Padmavati. She belongs to Halaki tribe. So when you said about that spoken poetry, so what she does is, whatever work we are doing, she has a song to it, like spontaneously. She comes up with that song and she sings. Let's say we are having this conversation, she would have come up. I mean, that's the tradition, that's the practice, or that's a folk tradition, and she documents all of it. So I think it, putting a definition and putting art in a category itself, I don't agree to that idea. I feel, the boundaries have to be fluid, and if a person truly enjoys making what he's making, that is art.
Right, right. And it's a big disservice when we box it.
Yeah.
So I'm at the end of this conversation from my side. I've exhausted the questions, and I think we had a good conversation. Um, I would request people, if they have any questions, to type it into the chat box. I'll just check meanwhile if there are any questions. Please come to Uri Kalankini's page and then type it, because I won't be able to see it. We don't have any questions, Adviti. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, I have a small thing to add. As artists, I think, or any form of art, we kind of have a social responsibility, is what I strongly feel. For example, media, like ads, like TV ads, if you take it, like all the commodities which are, let's say, pertaining to kitchen, let's say you're cooking oil or rinse soap, you always have a woman endorsing it. So it kind of subconsciously tunes everybody that these work, they have to be done by women.
Yeah.
But luckily, let's say Licious ad, if you see, you have a man who is cooking, and two women talking. No, it is changing slowly, which is a good thing. I think we are in the times where things are, the narratives are changing, and for example, that is what you're trying to do. Like, we are in these times, and first step we have taken, and we all have a moral responsibility, and if we just stick true to our work, I think majority of the work is taken care.
Yeah. Thank you, Adviti. It was really one, good conversation, full of substance and personal experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
You also take classes. Can you talk about that? So people, if they want to get in touch with you, to learn from you, how can they get in touch with you?
Okay, so I take classes in a school. So I work in Silver Oaks International School. But personal classes, 1 year back, I used to take, not anymore. But always, if FB page or Instagram, they can reach out. And since I think online classes are the norms because of the given situation, so if anybody wants any kind of help or want to know further, I can be something we can figure it out.
Thank you so much, Adviti. It was really good talking to you. Thank you for spending an hour and giving a valuable time. Yeah.
Thank you, Sneha. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
My screen has gone. So basically, it's just like blurred image. So I won't be able to end the meeting. Can you end the meeting, please?
Yeah.